quite like her before. Does it work? Microphone. Is microphone working? Is microphone working? Hello. I can't hear myself in this heads. Can you hear me? Just good. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the site event organized by the Center for Climate and Energy Analysis, Warsaw, Poland, hosted by Greek Pavilion. So thank you, Greece, for hosting us. We are really pleased to be here. We are going to have a panel discussion here with our distinguished guests. So I am going to make setting the scene with an extremely short presentation. But before that, let me introduce our guests. Mr. Kurt Vandenberge, Director General, DG Climate Action, European Commission. Hello, welcome. Minister Krzysztof Bolesta, Minister for Climate and Environment, Poland. Mr. Gerasimos Tomas, Director General, Taxation and Customs, DG. Sorry, welcome. Professor Simon Borghesi, Director of the Florence School of Regulation Climate, also President of the European Association of Environmental and Resource Economists. And Robert Jeśke, Deputy Director of the Institute of Environmental Protection in Poland, but first of all, the Director of the National Center for Emissions Management, institution responsible for EU climate policy implementation in Poland. Before we start talking, let me make a very short introduction. We are talking about development of EU climate policy focused on measures of that policy and more precisely focused on carbon pricing measures, trying to apply that to the global dimension. As we can learn from different reports, this one comes from World Bank report, State and Trends of Carbon Markets, or Carbon Pricing, we can find them, both emission trading schemes and carbon taxes around the world, including developing and developed countries. So although European Union is still a leader in terms of the price, the level of emission covered by emission trading schemes and carbon taxes is increasing. Now it is something like 24-25% of total emission. Let's focus for a while on the European Union. We learned from the communication before that we are about to set up reduction targets for 2040. So it was estimated that 77% is an appropriate target, but recently, in the recent communication, according to some advice from advisory board on climate action, we know that we are approaching 90%. So please keep it in mind in our discussion later today. When we look at the ETS itself, if we would assume current status of directive and all documents accompanying the directive and EU ETS, we can expect that the pool of carbon EU allowances, carbon credits, will run out in 2040 or early after this date. So this is our challenge to all of us, what to change in this approach to make it working onwards. At the Center for Climate and Energy Analysis, we are trying to investigate those options, including extension ETS towards new sectors, including removals as a necessary step to achieve net climate neutrality in the middle of this century. And what I hope we are going to discuss today, linking carbon pricing measures, in particular emission trading systems, in this global, international dimension. So you are welcome to look at that, but I believe our prominent speakers will say something more about that. We can expect different consequences of such actions, with some benefits and costs, some advantages, disadvantages that diverge between developed and developing countries. So this is another challenge, how to cope with this, to make it working and to be acceptable. We can expect that in the European Union, such action could help in dealing with EU ETS by installations, by companies, by lower prices, carbon prices. It is not the case beyond the European Union, outside the EU, because besides some benefits, not only in terms of reduction, they can expect some higher costs, and this is some kind of obstacle to that. That's it for the introduction, and now let me ask questions to our panelists and let them speak on that. The first question goes to Director Kurt van den Berge. Carbon pricing, as we could see, is increasingly popular in the world. The simple question is, what is the European Commission view on linking emission trading systems around the world?
Does this work? Okay. First of all, thank you very much for organizing this panel discussion. I'm very happy to be here with my twin brother in the European Commission, Gerasimos, to discuss these issues. I think carbon pricing works, and we've proven with the emission trading system that it is the workhorse and the crown jewel of our decarbonization policy, as Commissioner Hoekstra also said at his hearing in the Parliament. So that's why we really want to work with the rest of the world to make sure that everyone understands the effectiveness and the benefits of an emission pricing system as we have in the European Union. It's not replicable everywhere in the same way. A carbon pricing system, be it emission trading or a carbon taxation system, will have to be adapted, of course, to the local circumstances. Linking ETS systems is, of course, a very good idea in theory. In practice, it is not a very simple affair, because you really need equivalence in a lot of the rules and the administrative capacity. That's why we see very little linking up of ETS systems. There is one, I think, between California and Quebec, and there's another one that we have concluded with Switzerland, which works. But that's because we have, with Switzerland, a quite equivalent system in terms of the rules, the procedures, the monitoring, reporting and verification, etc., which ensures that there is high integrity in the whole system, which for the European Commission is, of course, above all, the most important condition, that the system works and that it is of very high intensity. What we need to realize is that it's not sufficient just to negotiate and agree a linking. You also need to do a lot of work to maintain this. It's a little bit like entering into a marriage. The marriage, the wedding celebration is one thing, but then keeping your marriage alive over time really needs work. Being married is a verb, as they say. With with Switzerland, we also have a very comprehensive agreement. Consider it a wedding contract that took quite some time to really negotiate and agree. So yes, linking is an ideal outcome, but it will only work with jurisdictions that have very similar features like we have in the EU. In the meantime, we need to reach out to partners so that they understand the advantages and the benefits of emission trading, maybe at a less ideal situation as we have in the EU. And then later on we can see how this all can work better together. And there I think the CBAM, on which Gerasimos can say much more, is a very welcome and useful trigger to arouse the interests of jurisdictions, and we see this across the world now. So for us, what is most important of all is that we work on global carbon pricing, that the price is put on emissions everywhere. It can be with different features, different systems, but having a price on carbon, that is the most important.
Thank you. This wedding is, I think, a good description of the linking ETSs. We are aware that actually there are a lot of challenges due to differences between jurisdictions and also economic impacts between ETSs, and this is a challenge. We are not saying that it is something that we can do very shortly. But perhaps this is a direction that we should go on. Integrating carbon pricing systems is not only simple linking those systems. So I would like to address my next question to Minister Bolesta, because linking or coupling those systems, mechanisms based on carbon pricing can include also a big, I would say, weaken soft linkages between those systems, like using offsets. This question refers also to our challenge, namely achieving climate neutrality target in the European Union. It is extremely ambitious. Can we achieve that through domestic measures only, or perhaps some offsetting would be useful to make it happen?
Thank you for the question.
I think you should not cover the end of the microphone, because this is receiver and.
Okay. Okay. Does it work now?
Yes.
Okay.
It does.
First of all, welcome to this silent disco. This is the first time a conference like this where everyone wears. This is actually quite interesting, and very, very good reference to the wedding as in terms of linking carbon emission markets and systems. I think we also have to realize that we are in a Greek pavilion, so Greek wedding is something else, and I think that's influence additional flavor. I think what is important is that you can do your reductions domestically, and you can include some trading, or you can include some offsets. I think there's a plethora of solutions, and of course the main outcome is the cost. So of course is if you wall yourself against the external world and you just prepare your own carbon market, then from the economic point of view, you can reach your reductions in a competitive way, in the most efficient way, but domestically. So ideal way to reduce costs globally is to link markets. But as Kurt said, this is complicated because you have different equivalents, different rules for different systems, and you need to have monitoring, verification, penalties as well at equal level. But again, we have this offsetting thing that is a possibility, that is a middle ground or middle way between full linking and a domestic carbon trading system. So I think this is attractive. Why? Because for me, take this COP. The discussion here mostly is about finance. How to get more finance into climate solutions. For me, carbon markets, carbon offsets is a way to stimulate more finance coming to the climate policy. Because in effect, what you're doing by inviting offsets, it's you basically invite your companies to invest money in other jurisdictions, bringing offsets back to your country. So I think it is as a good way to reducing carbon emissions. It's a good way to putting costs down globally, making this reduction more efficient. But also, I think what is really interesting from the perspective of this COP is that this is actually a way of climate finance.
Thank you. So as far as finance is concerned, we are talking that linking, integrating carbon pricing measures around the world is not so simple. We have something in the midway. So let me address next question to Director Thomas concerning CBAM, because I guess we can observe that CBAM used to work as some kind of driver, and we can observe more intensive actions to implement carbon pricing measures, ETSs in some countries, especially neighboring countries, candidate countries to the European Union. Could you reflect, Director Thomas, that is it something, CBAM, is it something that we will maintain for a long time, or it is something that will be less and less important following the development of carbon pricing measures around the world?
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here. I think, first of all, I would like to start to say that I think we do need a long-term commitment. What Kurt said about the marriage and the commitment is very important. I would keep away the Greek wedding because it's very expensive, and it's upfront cost that I'm not sure is beneficial. But I think that the long-term commitment is important. Also, the predictability is very important for investors. And I would also say that this instrument of carbon pricing and CBAM, which is the other side of the same coin, it is not the solution for everything that we have. So for the moment, we are concentrating, on energy-intensive sectors. And if we see about around the world, about 50 systems that we have on carbon tax or carbon pricing or 40 sub-regional systems, also they focus primarily in this area. So we have to focus in specific sectors where they are polluting now, and CBAM is not the right instrument for new technologies, for example, everywhere. For some is fine, but not for everyone. So second, I think we are very happy that through its transition period, the CBAM has this effect of making more countries think about carbon pricing. And I think we need, as you saw a bit in your graph, we have, this decade and next decade, we need these transition instruments. The difference between a regulatory measure and a carbon pricing or CBAM measure is that we leave the private sector to decide the how. We just say what has to be done, but the private sector decides the how. CBAM, as you know, is a way we take into account CO2 embedded emissions in products. So if we had taken a regulatory approach, we would have created a standard, and we say for every ton of aluminium that comes to Europe, this is the CO2 content that it has to have. And this is not efficient at the moment because the technologies to clean aluminium or steel or cement or chemicals tomorrow are not fully known. So that's what we need to avoid. We need to give the incentives to the industry to work towards a goal. I think the full linking, what I would say in the CBAM, like in the ETS pricing. On the CBAM, we try to make the different carbon border measures to talk to each other. If the UK has a carbon border measure, or if tomorrow developing countries will have, we need to make sure that they talk to each other. And for different reasons probably than the court described, because the linking in ETS has a specific, let's say, meaning. But for us, we need to move quickly. So I think if we make the systems talk to each other fast, is better than waiting to harmonize the systems later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. I think that this word transition measure is welcomed by many countries and companies, stakeholders of this issue, and this is promising. So once we could hear some statements and opinions from those prominent gentlemen involved in decision-making process, let me move to those who are observing and analyzing, but also providing knowledge to decision makers to support decision-making process. And my next question goes to Professor Simon Borghesi. We didn't mention one of another important issues that could help in achieving net zero targets, regardless it is in the European Union or globally. This is about removals. I know that Simon, that you are investigating very deeply that issue in your research. So could you reflect a bit on the significance, role of removals in achieving ambitious climate policy target in both dimensions, within the European Union and globally?
Well, thank you, and real pleasure to be here. CDR will be needed for sure. We know that we will need them to achieve net zero by 2050, but in my view, even more afterwards for negative emissions. Under the Life Course project that I direct at EY, we compare the projections of different models, including yours, Roberts, and we saw that all models include CDR, and they all predict an increase, a remarkable increase in CDR. So the problem is not whether, it is when, it is which, and it is how. On the when side, well, we have only New Zealand basically now with forestry, but UK and the EU are considering to include CDR in the future. But the when, the timing, will depend crucially on technological progress. And so this calls for R&D on CDR activities, in my view. And it depends on our ambition, our preferences, and also our acceptability, or the social acceptability of this. The which is a complicated issue because there are different CDR methods, and there is no optimal solution. Each one of them has pros and cons, so there are trade-offs that we should consider. In general, I think CDR in vegetation seems easier to implement, but they last less, they are more vulnerable to extreme weather events, so they are more uncertain. Whereas industrial removals may be better, but we need to investigate more. So they last longer, but we need to investigate more on that. That's why I was talking about R&D. So I don't think there is one fits-all solution. And finally, the how. Well, the how, we have different routes that we can follow. One obvious is integrated with carbon markets, because we have an architecture there already. We know how things work, and we need the liquidity. As the cap gets to zero, we will need more liquidity, and the CDR integration can help in this. On the other hand, the problem is that the prices may be so different. There are integrity issues that may arise, and I think there is one main problem in terms of mitigation deterrence. We do not want CDR to deter mitigation, to postpone mitigation. And this is something that we should keep in mind, because emitting and removing is not the same thing as emitting or as reducing. So I think we should first of all mitigate and then consider CDR as an option.
Thank you. Actually, it is something what I wanted to ask for, so thank you for this answer in the end.
I anticipated it. So.
Well, let me continue this scientific part of our discussion today and ask the question to Robert Jeschke, Director of the National Center of Emissions Management. Well, actually, my question is in line what I asked to Director Kurt van den Berge. Robert, we know that you are heading up Center for Climate and Energy Analysis, so you with your team made a lot of analysis. Can you reflect on those impact on different options of extending emission trading systems, different options, again with those two dimensions, EU and global?
Thank you. Can you listen? I mean, hear you me? Okay. So first of all, I think it's fine. It's funny because this Bright issue, like 6 guys sitting and talking about the wedding and the brides. It means that we need some diversity, and this diversity I found also within ETS and and the climate policy. So the wedding would be perfect match. And I think that the point where we are here in Europe in the climate policy, in ETS evolving, and what you, Simon, said, that we are seeing and everyone seeing this, that ETS needs some additional flow, and this additional flow can come from both removals and other solutions and integration with others that we can find. And I think the removals are, like we also analyze, this is the must-have, but we need also these technological removals which are very expensive. So the cheapest options with the LULUCF and forestry, which maybe not the cheapest, as a matter of fact, in Europe. But anyway, we need both of them. So most of focus of ours in coming into 2050 should be in technological removals, and then these removals cost. So we need a lot of money to invest in this technology, and this investment goes at cost, and costs are in both mitigation and investment. And mitigation doesn't care that we are investing in future solutions. So it means that we have the problem now. And the problem now should be solved, of course, without any harm to the climate goals. So that means that if you think about another solution for restructurization of ETS, then obvious thing is the aligning with other instruments around the globe. I won't be so afraid of linking with the other system and the vision that they should supposed to follow up exactly the shape of ETS that we know it in Europe, because if we see other systems which are different, but we know that 1 ton of reduction is a 1 ton of reduction, so this is a basic step. So as long as we treat the other system comparable in terms of reduction of 1 ton CO2, then other things are things that we can solve and work on that. And so this is the first step to aligning with the other system, expanding the role of carbon pricing and the role of EU with ETS. At the 2050 schedule, not the 2030, after 2030. So that means that we have to step back, look at the overall picture, and find a solution that is suitable for our goals. And our goals is to reduce the emission, maintain ETS as the main instrument and promote that, keep industry in place, and save the households in Europe to not vote against the climate policy as such.
Thank you, Robert. I'd like to ask you another question that refers to previous comments made by Professor Borghesi. The question is, I know that you are recommending in your reports, in CAKE reports, establishing something like European Central Carbon Bank that could deal with both removals, emission allowances, just carbon credits. Could you reflect shortly on this idea? Please shortly, because I'm going to ask one more question to our decision makers here. This is a question to Robert, but Simone, if you want to reflect, to add something, so please follow Robert then.
Okay, so really shortly, because this is like follow-up of what already said about the integration of other instruments like linking, removals, offsetting. So when we think about, and you could mention exactly that we need to stabilize the overall coherence of the climate policy, especially in ETS. So we need some kind of safeguard. And I think the institution, like we call it, and through the several analyses, we used to use the name European Central Carbon Bank, but in general is the institution like the safeguard of this work that we are trying to progress with ETS and to stabilize the ETS as we know it, with the role of the reduction and mitigation workhorse, and at the same time mitigate the unexpected cost, increasing the prices that you observe with the shock of Ukraine, the Russia aggression on Ukraine, and the increase of the prices, and the same shock we could observe in coming years when our predictions on the development of clean technological won't go the way that we would like to. And this is this kind of safeguards save us in this kind of surprises that we can envisage. And that's why this institution should be the safeguard, the watchdog of the situation, but at the same time generate money that we can just push into the internal decarbonization and the technological progress, or we can support other countries, especially Global South, in their reductions, which is very, let's say, tempting from our point of view, because we're still working here in the COP on delivering more funds to others that they simply cannot afford that. And so with this watchdog and the central bank, because the bank can spend money, we can try to solve also other problems we see as well in determining the climate policy in Europe and finding other alliances worldwide.
Yes, Jon, if you want to add something, please.
Well, just to add that normally in the academia we disagree, but in this case I have to agree with Robert, and apparently there is quite an uniformity of view. I was talking to Otmar in one of our events as well, and he is also suggesting the idea of a carbon central bank with what he calls a sequencing, so that where carbon central bank might emerge at a later stage. But certainly the idea of using the revenues for the Global South is something I fully agree with, and maybe also using part of the CBAM revenues conditional on their investing in clean technologies. I don't know if you agree on this, but that's one tempting hypothesis.
I'm taking notes, but I can say a few words about this.
Yes,
something.
please.
Yeah. I mean, we certainly need to invest all over the world on getting rid of CO2 emissions. What we do say when it comes to the issues is that carbon pricing creates revenue, and the revenue is extremely important, including in the less developed countries. They need to create domestic revenue to take care of their investment needs. When it comes to CBAM, I think our estimations and on the basis of the sectors that we cover now, the revenues they're going to have is very small. We are going to have 1.5 billion by 2030. So it's not in the interest of the less developed countries to focus on getting this money. I mean, Europe gives much more as Commission and member states. We give much more aid, climate-related aid to these countries. So I think linking each instrument with the support that it is required is not necessarily a good idea, but I think we need to transfer technology, we need to do capacity building, we need to have all over pricing as a method for us to use and invest.
Thank you. So, as promised, I'd like to ask one more question. As we are here in Baku at COP29, our title is Powering Climate Action. So we all are here because we support going towards ambitious climate targets, climate neutrality perhaps, but we cannot run away from the situation around the world, from this global situation. So the question I'm going to ask, you can answer this question for hours, I know, but we don't have so much time. So I would like to ask to get just 1-2 points that we should focus on. The question is about combining or maintaining ambitious climate policy with competitive European Union. If our two directors, perhaps Minister Bolesta, could reflect on this just in short points. What we should focus on mainly?
Happy to comment on this. I just would like to take 2 minutes to comment on the other issues. First, we need reduction of emissions everywhere, and that's why we need carbon pricing, and CBAM is triggering that. But we also need carbon removals in the future. So we need to make sure that in the next decade, carbon removals are very big, both in Europe and worldwide. And so we will be looking at how to put in place the framework for this. I would hope that the agreements that will be reached, I hope, this week at the COP on the Article 6 will contribute to fostering a global development of carbon removals. What is very important is that this will incentivize removals, maybe also reduction, but not avoidance. That is something we have avoided, that there will be no credits for just avoiding carbon emissions. That's very important. Secondly, we have had a very bad experience with allowing foreign credits into our ETS system. And we have decided with a very good reason that all our domestic policies should be done with domestic action only. Now there is a distinction to be made between linking ETS systems and opening up an ETS to foreign credits. I don't think today that we are in a situation that we can say the integrity is high enough that we open again to foreign credits. If we see that there are high integrity carbon removal credits developed elsewhere, first we need to make sure that we support that. And secondly, that we see then how this can combine with a European ETS, maybe on top of a domestic target. But that we're not making ourselves dependent on what is happening in the rest of the world for reducing our emissions. Thirdly, we agree that we will need to revisit the whole Fit for 55 for the after 2030. Let there be no mistake, we don't want to change anything for 2030. We have a framework in place that is fit for 2030. It is not fit for 2040. Because, for a number of reasons, one is that it indeed, ETS1 will run to zero allowances in 2039. And that we cannot have. So we need to change this, revisit it, to make it a much more cost-efficient transition. We will propose soon the 90% emission reduction target for 2040, exactly to give predictability to economic operators and investors, and then reorganize, revisit, review the whole framework in order to be well prepared for the next decade. And that we want to do with all stakeholders in a very deep and broad discussion. Lastly, what we've seen, and by the way, we will and are looking at the concept of a carbon central bank. I'm not in a position today to say whether this is the solution. In a certain way, we have a carbon bank with the market stability reserve, which is a little bit like, you could consider it a precursor to a certain carbon central bank. But so it's certainly something we will study. Where we are now with ETS is that ETS is making extremely good progress in decarbonizing power. That will continue, no doubt about it. It will now start on industrial decarbonization as well. Why? Because until now, free allowances were given to industry, to the large emitters that were at risk of carbon leakage. The Bundesbank has come out with a report very recently saying there is no carbon leakage because of climate policy. They're very, very clear in this. But obviously, we now need to watch for the years to come when we remove free allowances and put in place the CBAM. The CBAM for us is meant as a climate tool that is protecting or at least leveling the playing field for European industry. But that in itself will not be sufficient. We need accompanying policies. And that's why we will be working hard in the first 100 days on a clean industrial deal to make sure that we have accompanying policies in place to make sure that our energy intensive industries can succeed in Europe. For them, it's not a question of technology so much. It's really a question of giving them the business case so that they invest in Europe. And we need them in Europe as well. And there we will look at all possible measures to make sure that that investment happens here, including, as Gerasimos was saying, the use of revenues, which we do know through the Innovation Fund, which is really becoming a quite big success story. It's oversubscribed 6 times. So we will want to put in place, as part of the Clean Industrial Deal, these auctions as a service, where we organize competitive bidding for subsidies for energy-intensive industries or their products at European level, and invite member states to top that up so that it becomes really very big programs that help our industry get through this decarbonization transition. Sorry for being a bit long, but I wanted to quickly say these things.
Thank you. I didn't interrupt you because you were drawing a very comprehensive picture, so thank you for that. Minister Bolesta or Director Thomas, would you like to add something to that?
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I noted down 3 points because you asked me what the industry needs. I think we should ask the industry, but what from my contacts with industrial players, I think one thing that comes through really clearly is that the business sector needs predictability. So carbon market that is predictable is something they need. Today we have you basically assume what happens around 2040 when the emission allowances basically expire. Like, this is it. This is the end game. Like, what happens if I'm emitting in 2040 and there's no allowances to buy? So I think we need to have this discussion and show to the industry that there's a predictability going when we need to decarbonize. Now, I buy Robert's. Don't need a. Yeah, I think it's. I would not be a good pop singer. So we need predictability. And I think carbon bank would be one of the nice options to actually regulate the whole market and plethora of different systems, including MSR as a seed of the market. I think the second point I noted down is level playing field, and CBAM is a good tool to actually provide this level playing field for the industry that needs protecting from imported goods that are not subject to climate legislation or climate rules. And last but not least, I think I understand that we have some bad experience in the past from offset, but observing my 3-year-old experimenting with things. If he stopped doing stuff because he did something wrong, I think he would not develop at all. So he's trying to repeat all the things that he, did wrong. And I think we have technology, we have experience, and we also learned that we can do offsets in a good way. So even control, under controlled circumstances, maybe we have carbon market in Europe. So maybe let's try to start with candidate countries, European Energy Community. Start small, but I think optimizing costs for industry is something we should not just deny straight away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Director Thomas, would you like to reflect on my question on competitiveness and ambitious climate policy just shortly, please?
Well, I think the competitiveness will take place in the clean industry. We see it in China, we see it in India, we see it here. So there is no, let's say, no diversion on the ultimate objective. And I think if we develop the right tools, I think we can give the initiative to the private sector. Technologies will come from the private sector. Industrial policies will come from the private sector. Removals will come with private sector initiatives. So I think from my perspective, I think if we have a good Article 6 here in this meeting, I think it will give us the time and the opportunity to focus on how to sort out the details. And I don't want to commit to something, but we are really looking forward to see how the concluded Article 6, how it will play our system, and how we can either learn from mistakes or create new ways by which we will need to take this new market into our toolkit.
Thank you. And the last comment, Robert would like to...
Yeah, I fully agree with what Gerasimus said. This Article 6 is the holy grail. We're waiting for that for 15 years now. But I would like to point one thing, that our let's say, experience with the CDM and credits in ETS, and not only in ETS, also in non-ETS, of course, this is a bad example of how you should use offset. But the tragical of this using was not because of EU, but because of the integrity of the project that were conducted around the globe, and it was under UNFCCC. And I wouldn't say that I would like to see Article 6, but if I see an Article 6 in 15 years of working on that, I would say that Europe got this power to force internally the Article 6 solutions that should be, agreed upon on the UNFCCC. We work in EU on standards with the removals and the different sectoral levels, CRS certification process. So we setting the standard for the EU. So when we say that the standards that we are setting in EU, we can use around the globe for the projects that meeting the standards, and we can use these credits in the not only ETS, ETS2, non-ETS. We have a much bigger problem in non-ETS with the cost. That means that we are, let's say, going forward with Article 6, and then the rest would follow. So I wouldn't say that Article 6 we will wait still that next couple of years. I would like to see them this week, but if not, this is not the case that I'll stop our thinking. We should stop our thinking.
Thank you. I know we can talk about that for hours, but we cannot. So before I thank to our distinguished speakers, let me just make a short disclaimer. This event was made possible due to the support from the European Union that funds this project LiveView 2050, that we made those reports due to those money. And first of all, big thanks to our prominent speakers, Director Vandenberger, Director Thomas, Minister Bolesta, Professor Borghesi, and Director Jeschke. Thanks a lot and have a nice day.